Top movie star Hugh was exposed to be secretly married and have a child. The trending topic is far ahead, and the major social media platform is almost paralyzed. Fans and paparazzi are frantically searching for news of the woman and the child but find nothing. But Hugh's fans are not satisfied, and want Hugh to give an explanation. Looking at the trending topic, I can't laugh because I am the child born from that secret marriage. I looked at the various comments on my phone, and then at the man and woman who were silently confronting each other. My chubby face was full of worry. My name is Gigi. I am 5 years old. If there are no surprises, I am indeed the daughter of the tall and handsome man in front of me. Next to him is my biological mother, Joyce. The woman is wearing a black women's suit. Inside the well-tailored suit is a white silk shirt, faintly revealing a delicate and beautiful collarbone. Her neat shoulder-length short hair and matte red lips make her look unapproachable. My mom is a female president. We are now in her office, discussing solutions to the public opinion. I inherited the high IQ of my mom's family. When I was 3 years old, my uncle who works in a scientific research institution took me to take an intelligence test. Now that I am 5 years old, I am a sensible, well-behaved child who can understand adult disputes. Didn't you know that you were followed by paparazzi when you went home last night? My mom is very angry. She accuses Hugh of not being careful enough. And the man who is said to be my dad lowered his head, looking aggrieved. Wife, I missed you so much that I didn't notice there were paparazzi behind me. As a sensible child, I only found out last night that I have a dad. In my memory, there is no such role as dad in my family. When I was 3 years old, I asked my mom, "Mom, why don't I have a dad?" My mom was full of guilt and said that dad had gone to work in a faraway place and would come back later. I understood. It's a classic excuse to deceive children. I should have no dad. Since then, I haven't mentioned this question again. Who knew that my dad was actually alive and really just went away for work? Hugh went abroad for further studies 4 years ago. As a result, due to the epidemic and various subsequent works, he didn't come back for several years. There is usually not even a video call. It's normal and reasonable for me to think that I have no dad. Last night, in the middle of the night, when I saw a man tightly wrapped up enter the door and hug my mom, I thought I was going to have a stepdad. Hugh said that he had a conflict with my mom and was in a blocked state for a long time. And he couldn't come back. What kind of conflict lasts for years? Finally, when the epidemic was lifted, Hugh came back with his upcoming movie. But at this time, the news of his secret marriage and having a child spread. Hugh is 30 this year and is on the film and television route. It's okay if he is just in a relationship or just got married. But the problem is that my child is 5 years old. Such a big daughter can't be put back. I am 5 years old. I must have had something going on at least 6 years ago. A young and handsome man at 24 is already married. His fans can't accept it. The backlash brought by this wave of unfollowing and stepping back is not small. Obviously Hugh doesn't care much about his fans. He said, "Wife, don't worry. I won't let Gigi's information be leaked." My mom is in a very bad mood and obviously still wants to scold him. But I am here. She can't let it out. I am already thinking about asking my secretary's sister to take me out to eat some snacks. Just at this time. That is. My dad's phone rang. It was his agent calling. "Sister Zhu." Hugh put it on speakerphone. A female voice came from the phone. "Hugh. There is a parent-child variety show asking about your willingness. Do you want to consider taking your daughter to participate?" Hugh subconsciously wanted to refuse. "Sister Zhu. You know that I don't want." Sister Zhu interrupted him. "Hugh. You also know your identity. Even if you hide your wife and child tightly, there will always be people who will did. I'm not worried about President Shenhen. But think about it. In the future, when your child has a parent-teacher conference or is sick and sent to the hospital, will you, as a father, still hide?" Hugh was stunned for a moment. Sister Zhu on the other end said, "Hugh, Discuss it well with President Shenhun. Although the variety show will expose the child, if it is filmed well, it can also be a good opportunity to change the direction of public opinion. And didn't you say that you haven't seen your daughter for several years? Take this opportunity to cultivate your relationship. Don't let it be that after several years, the child still doesn't know that she has a dad. I really didn't know. After saying this, the call was hung up. Hugh looked at my mom. Wife, don't worry. I won't let Gigi be exposed. But my mom didn't speak. Instead, she looked at me and said to her husband, who looked like a gigolo, you should ask Gigi's opinion. My mom's way of educating children has always been to be reasonable. After she knew that I was intelligent like my uncle, her way of education was also different from other parents. After she finished speaking, my biological dad, whom I met for the second time, squatted down and looked at me at eye level. Gigi, would you like to go to the variety show with Dad? It's just going up to play. There are other children and many uncles and aunts. My dad looks a bit embarrassed. After all, I am already a 5-year-old big child. But my dad is really good looking. No wonder my mom likes him. Yes. I nodded. I have to see what kind of person my dad is. That night, I called my little uncle. My little uncle probably just got off work. As soon as he heard about my dad, he sneered, your dad? Only his face is good looking. When they get divorced, Uncle will take you out to celebrate. It seems that my dad, the movie star who married into a wealthy family, is not very popular. Hugh has been at home for several days. Logically speaking, he should cultivate his relationship with me, his daughter whom he hasn't seen for several years. However, the two adults, he and my mom, didn't step out of the room even at 12 noon. The aunt who takes care of me took my little chubby hand and said, Gigi, how about Aunt making a small cake for you? Small cake. Thank you, Aunt. After squatting beside Aunt for a long time, I finally got my small cake. Looking back and seeing that my mom's room was open, I ran in like a little firecracker. Mom. My mom is still lying on the bed. She wouldn't be like this before. I worriedly put my hand on her forehead. Mom. Are you sick? My mom smiled. Just as she was about to say something, the bathroom door in the bedroom opened. My dad came out wearing only a pair of black trousers and was shirtless. I saw that there were some pink scratch marks on his chest, back, and even arms. I was stunned. My parents seemed to realize that it was not good for me to see these. So my mom threw a shirt over. Put on your clothes. Hugh hurriedly put on his clothes. Then he looked at me helplessly. Gigi. I sighed and looked at my mom. Mom. Even if Dad did something wrong, you can't be domestically violent. Domestic violence is not good. The two adults fell into silence together. After a while, my mom twitched the corner of her mouth. Okay. Mom knows. I went out and heard Hugh saying to my mom behind me, Wife. Did Gigi call me Dad? The variety show shooting is in 2 days. My mom just happens to have a project that requires a business trip. Sister Zhu came to pick us up. I followed Hugh and got into the car. Sister Zhu and Hugh's assistant looked at me in surprise. Boss. This is your daughter. So cute. His assistant was eyeing my chubby face and made an envious sound. He wanted to pinch my face. But my dad slapped his hand away. If you want a daughter, have one yourself. Don't covet someone else's. Boss. When will you give me a raise? Only when I save enough for a down payment can I get married. Woo woo woo. Assistant brother was crying falsely. But Hugh fell for it. I'll give you a big red envelope for your year-end bonus this year. Great. My only boss. When we arrived at the shooting location, and I was about to get out of the car, a pair of hands suddenly passed under my armpits and picked me up. I looked up and met those eyes that were extremely similar to mine. Gigi. Tell Dad if there is anything later. Don't be afraid. He probably thought that since I had never faced the camera before, I would be nervous. I am extremely calm, Dad. I'm not afraid. After these few days, I have completely adapted to the fact that my dad is a big star. No wonder there are so many posters and merchandise of Hugh at home. Usually, his movies and TV dramas are also the ones played the most. It doesn't matter. As long as mom likes it. As soon as my dad and I got out of the car, we received all kinds of gazes. After all, although my dad didn't deliberately create a single persona before, fans already thought he was a perennial bachelor. At 30 years old, fans were urging him to find a girlfriend. As a result, without making a sound, not only was he married, but he also had a child as old as me. Fans feel like they have been betrayed. It's not that he can't get married. It's just that he hid it for several years. They can't bear it in their hearts. I don't understand what my dad's fans think. I'm just a child. You're here. Someone greeted enthusiastically. Long time no see. My dad greeted him. The uncle's gaze then fell on me. This. Gigi. ZHI in Gardenia. My daughter. I heard my dad introduce. I looked up at the uncle who was dressed very artistically. Hello. Uncle Zhang. A man in fright was surprised. Little treasure. You know me? I nodded. You sing well. I know his name is Xavier. He is a singer. In the past, his music variety show programs were played at home. Uncle Xavier grinned. Little treasure really has good taste. Unlike my son, who has no artistic cells at all. Hugh beside me seems a bit unhappy. At this time, the program team spoke through a small loudspeaker. Please ask several parents to take their children to the square and gather. The shooting location is actually a relatively remote small village with beautiful scenery. I saw a total of 5 pairs of parents and children. Musician Uncle Xavier brought his 6-year-old son Leo. Athlete Aunt Ching brought her 8-year-old son Hao Hao. Actor Uncle Brian brought his 5-year-old son Jia Jia. Actor Aunt Sue brought her 4-year-old daughter Yu Yu. And my dad brought me. However, because their children came to a strange place, they closely followed their parents. When gathering, almost all of them were holding hands. As for me and my dad, there is still enough space between us to fit another person. The father and daughter don't seem very familiar. The director team wanted to say something but hesitated. But in the end, the director team still spoke. Teacher Z, please stand closer to your baby. The sound of the small loudspeaker is not at all small. Only then did my dad notice that except for our not-so-familiar father and daughter, all the other children were closely sticking to their guardians. Hugh. He silently moved in my direction. At least we looked a bit more familiar. The director was satisfied. He picked up the small loudspeaker and continued. Welcome all parents and children to our program. As you can see, we are in a beautiful small village. Here, parents and children have to rely on their own labor to obtain a place to live and food. The director is a nearly 6-foot-tall man from northeast China. When speaking, he unconsciously softened his tone. He is burly but obviously also has a heart that loves children. Can the children introduce yourself and your parents? The first one to be pushed out was the oldest child. I called Hao Hao, the son of diver Aunt Ching. He said seriously, hello everyone. My name is Hao Hao. I am 8 years old this year. This is my mom Ching. She is a super awesome diver. The little guy's face is full of pride in his mom. I looked at Aunt Ching. She is so beautiful. I have seen her diving competitions on TV before. Mom said that she also wanted to be an athlete before, but later was dragged down by the huge family property. Although I know she is talking nonsense. My mom probably doesn't have outstanding athletic talent. Although she is also extremely beautiful. Next is the son of Uncle Xavier who is dressed extremely artistically. My name is Leo. I am 6 years old this year. The little brother who was wearing equally cool clothes said with a cold face. This is my dad Lao Zhang. He is a singer. Before he finished speaking, he was beaten. Uncle Zhang scolded. You little brat. Your mom calls me Lao Zhang and so do you. Your dad is a singer. The young child covering his head looked unconvinced. Isn't that just someone who sings? Savior. There is no way to refute. A father and son are angry with each other. The adults around laughed. Probably in their eyes. Such children are smart and interesting. Hello, everyone. My name is Gia. I am 5 years old this year. This is my dad Brian. He is an emperor. Uncle Xiao hurriedly covered his son's mouth and couldn't help laughing at the camera. He played an emperor before. The child remembered. Uncle Brian is not young. He is the oldest among all the parents here. Not long ago, he played in a political drama and played the role of an unfortunate emperor with a lot of scenes. It's my turn. I am facing the camera and am quite curious. Hello everyone. My name is Gigi. The CHI in Gardenia. I am 5 years old this year. My dad is an actor. His name is. I looked up at my dad and suddenly got stuck. Looking up again. I pulled his clothes. Dad. Which way is the one in your name? I am not ashamed because I don't know my dad's name. I am just a 5-year-old child. Uncle said that at my age, I should be happily playing with mud downstairs in the community. Well, mud is so fun. My dad was stunned for a moment. But for some reason, he seemed to laugh. Then he bent down and wrote the character Hui in his name stroke by stroking my palm. Softly, he said, remember? He seemed to still want to quote scriptures and explain this name to me. But then thinking that I am still a 5-year-old child, he gave up. I remembered. So I continued to face the camera and said, my dad is Hugh. He is an actor. His representative works include The Legend of Ting Qinji. I said a few according to my memory and then stopped. I only remember these. In the past, the TV dramas at home were all watched by my mom secretly downstairs when I was asleep. I caught her several times. The next day, she insisted that it was just a dream I had. Dishonest mom. As for my dad, my young, good-looking dad who is still called brother by fans, after hearing my introduction of him, he showed a touched expression. Dad, I just have a good memory. Finally, it was the youngest sister. She is extremely cute. There are 2 small buns on her head. Her face is round. Her eyes are round. Even the flesh on her face looks bouncy. Will she cry if I take a bite? But that little sister faced the camera and didn't open her mouth for a long time. When she found that everyone's eyes were on her, her eyes filled with tears for a moment. Her lips moved but still couldn't open. Aunt Sue finally squatted down and gently coaxed her daughter. Baby. Don't cry. Mom will say it for you. She reached out and wiped away the crystal-clear teardrops on her daughter's face. There was sadness in her eyes. But Aunt Sue's beautiful face showed a smile instead. She looked at the camera. Hello everyone. I am Sue. This is my daughter Yu. She just turned 4. Something happened to Yu when she was 2 years old. She doesn't like to talk very much. I hope everyone can be understanding. Aunt Sue's smile is very infectious. My dad reached out and touched my head and also fell silent for a moment. Later, I learned that there was a fire in Aunt Sue's house. Aunt Sue and her daughter were at home. That night, her husband returned home. The fire was so severe that even the firefighters said that the people inside were in great danger. He didn't listen to advice and rushed in. He rescued his wife and daughter who were already surrounded by the fire. But he was seriously injured and died despite rescue efforts. After Yu, who was 2 years old at that time, woke up in the hospital. She didn't speak anymore. The doctor said it was a psychological problem. This incident was very lively on the internet before. Aunt Sue later put aside her work and accompanied her daughter wholeheartedly. Recently, she took on a parent-child variety show, hoping that her daughter can get in touch with peers. Uncle the director spoke at this time. All parents and children have a preliminary understanding. Now let's draw lots to decide the houses where everyone will live these days. I saw several photos. Although it is a small mountain village, some people here have already built big villas and small Western-style houses. Of course, there are also those who still live in brick houses. The disparity between several houses stunned me. Uncle the director said that in this session, it depends on the luck of our children. Draw from the youngest to the oldest. Yu's younger sister drew a beautiful small Western-style house. I was full of confidence. As soon as I drew and picked it up to look, there was clearly a photo of a brick house on it. Am I the unlucky one? The shock on my face was too obvious. My dad came over and took a look at the photo in my hand. He laughed with effect. I looked at him gloomily. Probably realizing that he is now a father. Hugh finally restrained his expression. He comforted me in a low voice and said, "Gigi, it's just a house. When Dad cleans it up, it will be a beautiful little house." My dad probably thinks I'm easy to deceive. No matter how clean a brick house is, it can't be as beautiful as a small Western-style house. Even a 5-year-old can't be deceived. But what makes me sad is my luck. When drawing lots in kindergarten, I am almost always the lucky star. I looked up and said, "Dad, let's go clean the house." I suddenly accepted the reality. Hugh was stunned for a moment. He was afraid that I was suppressing my emotions. For the rest, Aunt Ching's son How drew the only villa in the village. Uncle Brian's family drew an ordinary two-story house. Which is not bad either. Uncle's Avier's Lille drew the worst house except ours. It's just a large flat. But it looks very warm in the photo. Lille was extremely envious of How who drew the big villa. I suspected that he was thinking about trading houses. But he was pulled back by Uncle's Avier. "We'll live in this one. When your dad was a child, he lived in this kind of rural house. Come on. Dad will take you to experience it." Lille. All parents and children have drawn their own houses. Now please go and find them according to the map. I took that extremely scribbled map and thought that even my kindergarten desk mate drew better than this. We were going in different directions. Our family was on a different road from others. There was also a photographer uncle following us alone. I looked at the little Yu's younger sister reluctantly. If the house our family drew wasn't so bad, I would want to take her with me. According to what my mom said, I am like a cowboy who has taken a fancy to the Weaver girl. Unfortunately, I didn't make up the myth. Now the beautiful younger sister I like lives in a small Western-style house. And I live in a small brick house. Hugh looked down at the map in his hand countless times. The roads in the small mountain village were very winding. The two of us, father and daughter, got lost. My dad stared at the camera with gritted teeth. Who drew this map? A good-looking person is good-looking even when angry. Moreover, it is obvious that my dad is acting for the variety show effect. He even seems to have the leisure to stroll around this small village for 2 hours. But he was thinking about my short arms and legs. He bent down and looked at me and said, "Gigi, are you tired? Do you want Dad to carry you?" I looked up at him, and then firmly shook my head. "No need. I can do it." Then I walked in front by myself, at an angle where I couldn't see. Hugh showed a disappointed expression. According to the map I had seen before, I finally found a house on the small village road that corresponded to a certain place on that abstract map. Then I turned around and looked behind. "Dad, we're here." My dad came over and took a look and compared it. "It really is." He laughed. Then he casually touched my head. "Gigi is great. Our small brick house is indeed simple." The one who opened the door to welcome us was an old grandma. The grandma's hair was silver white. When she saw the two of us, she exclaimed, "Why is it a little girl coming to live here? It's very messy here and needs to be cleaned up." The grandma seemed to really like me. She took my hand and introduced this house to me. "The house is very old." The grandma said it was built almost 30 years ago. In fact, no one lives here now. It was only because the program team said they wanted to find an old house, that they cleaned up the house that was piled with a lot of sundries. After hearing her words, my dad, who seemed out of place in this house, became resentful again towards the camera. "It's hard for your program team. You must have put in a lot of effort to find such a place." My dad, as a top star, definitely has a good-looking face. Even at 30 years old. He looked like he is in his 20s. When he said this, his face was full of that unrestrained sense of youthfulness. People would never think that time has passed on his face. I looked up at the grandma and asked curiously, "Grandma, where do you live now?" The grandma chuckled. "I live in the villa further inside." It turned out that the only villa in the village was also hers. The grandma was really unexpectedly low-key. The grandma only introduced the situation inside the house to us. Then she walked back to her more than 200 square meter big villa with her leisurely steps. The two of us, father and daughter, were left to start cleaning the house. Mainly my dad did the cleaning. Although the program team didn't do a proper job, the house did show signs of being cleaned. Even the bedding was new. But my beautiful dad was still in a mess while cleaning. I wanted to help. But he took out a piece of candy from his pocket and asked me to go to the corner and count ants. For dinner was eaten with other parents and children at the place designated by the program team. Probably because we were really exhausted from running around today. The big meal was very sumptuous. Uncle the director said that this was a meal cooked by the villagers. It was really fragrant. My dad was talking to other parents. Except for athlete Tad Ching, who came to participate in this variety show. Everyone else seemed to know him. Uncle Xavier was the most familiar one. He was putting his arm around my dad. The Yu's younger sister I was thinking about was eating quietly. Aunt Sue was feeding her. I walked over and sat next to her with my own bowl. Aunt Sue obviously noticed me. She smiled gently. "Gigi, are you looking for Yu?" I nodded and took a mouthful of rice. "By the way, the younger sister is as beautiful as Aunt. I like her. Mom said that being a face connoisseur is a hereditary problem in our family." "It's not embarrassing." Sue was stunned for a moment. Then she looked down at her daughter, and found that the little girl with round eyes, who was chewing on a radish, was staring at me. But she didn't say anything. Aunt Sue seemed a bit surprised. She said to her daughter, "Yu, this is Sister Gigi. Do you want to make friends with her?" I knew that making friends required taking the initiative. So I took the initiative and leaned over and said, "Yu's younger sister. I am Gigi." But Yu ignored me. Aunt Sue was a bit embarrassed. She seemed to want to say something to comfort me. I spoke first. "Aunt Sue. It's okay. The younger sister is just shy. We will get familiar later. My mom said that not every child is as sociable as me. Here is a shy child." At this time, Hugh called out, "Gigi, come back and eat." I obediently went back. I started to worry. Making friends with a shy person is really not an easy thing. After dinner, everyone went back to their own places. But our family still faced such a problem. The house was from many years ago. There was no hot water equipment at all. Even there was no electric kettle. This meant that we had to burn firewood to take a bath tonight. Hugh looked at the program team with a dark expression. "Forget about taking a bath. What about drinking water? Do the two of us have to burn fire to boil water even to drink?" The staff pointed to a box of mineral water in the house, indicating that it could be drunk directly. That is to say, if you want to drink hot water, you still have to boil it. And we are not allowed to go and borrow from others. This cruel fact made my dad so angry that he wanted to give the program team the middle finger. But he held back. He probably understood. This house was a pit from the beginning. The program team deliberately wanted to see people like him who were used to living in big cities experience the feeling of being at a loss in the countryside. By the way, let their originally great images in front of their children be destroyed. But the program team miscalculated. They watched a tall and handsome guy who was more than 6 feet tall light a fire on the stove, carry a pot, put in water, and casually throw a few sweet potatoes he got from somewhere into the burning fire. After a while, he pulled them out with a small stick, peeled them, and then handed them to me, who was sitting on a small stool. Finally, he showed a disdainful smile towards the camera. When I was filming in the countryside back then, what didn't I learn? Such a small thing still wants to stump me? What kind of daydream are you having? It is said that this part of my dad was later jokingly called the strongest role king by netizens. Anyway, he showed off. But at the moment, I only have the sweet potato in my hand. In front of the camera, my dad and I were eating roasted sweet potatoes one by one with relish. There was no sign of the city people during the day at all. We blended in very well with the surrounding environment. Dad, the sweet potato is delicious. I praised my dad, whom I had just met not long ago, without hesitation. You are great. My dad was obviously smug. His hands were black. He restrained the urge to touch my head. Gigi, don't worry. Dad will definitely make sure you eat well and live well these days. Before coming, he had promised that these days were just to bring me to have fun. But now he let me live in such a brick house and still have to light a stove. Probably he was afraid that I would think he was unreliable. I didn't think there was anything wrong. Instead, I found it fun. After eating the sweet potato, my dad took out a handkerchief, dipped it in water, and wiped my face. Then he took out a big basin from the house, filled it with hot water. Finally, he took out my pajamas and small towel from my small suitcase. He asked a bit uneasily, Gigi, you can take a bath by yourself, right? If it was a son or the daughter was younger, he wouldn't have to worry. For a son, father and son could take a bath together. But I am a girl and already 5 years old. My dad breathed a sigh of relief after seeing me nod. Probably if I couldn't take a bath by myself, he would have to ask the other two female parents or other female staff members for help. Dad is just outside. If there is anything, just call out directly. This house is only one room that can be lived in. The other room is filled with too many sundries. This means that tonight I have to sleep in the same room with my dad. He was also not at ease leaving me sleeping alone in a room. Before going to bed, he took out my little bear from his suitcase and put it in the middle. Do you want a bedtime story? I haven't heard a bedtime story for a long time. My mom is very busy and tired. When she reads a bedtime story, she can fall asleep faster than me. So I watched my dad take out a fairy tale book again and start reading stories to me. I gradually became drowsy. Before falling asleep, I murmured, "Good night, Dad." The story slowly stopped. I vaguely heard, "Good night, Gigi." The camera stopped working and everything returned to silence. 5 early the next morning. When I woke up, there was no sign of my dad beside me. There was some faint noise outside. I rubbed my eyes and walked out. My dad, who was wearing an apron, was bringing a plate of little rabbit bread to the table. I was stunned for a moment. Gigi is awake? Hurry up and brush your teeth and come over to have breakfast. I was dazed and went to find my little toothbrush. Then I squatted at the door and brushed my teeth. After I finished brushing my teeth, my dad was troubled by my head. I have long hair. The hair before going out yesterday was still tied by the aunt at home. My dad, who was a bee king last night, fell into deep thought at this moment. Among the roles he has played in the past, there is no kind father type who ties little buns for his daughter. But this problem didn't trouble him for too long. After several attempts, he still managed to tie a ponytail for me at the cost of I don't know how many of my hairs. I was about to cry. Under the camera, my dad secretly hid many pulled-out hairs behind him, for fear that I would see them. After that was breakfast. Dad said that the director only allowed us to make breakfast with the ingredients we had at home. Here we only have flour, eggs, and milk. So he made little rabbit bread and fried 2 eggs with 2 glasses of milk. Our breakfast is extremely healthy. In front of the camera, my dad said with regret, "There are not enough tools and ingredients. Otherwise, Dad could make little tigers and little cats for you." At this moment, the director who was watching Hugh show off ground his back molars. Is there nothing he can't do? Who is he showing off for? Having a daughter is so great, right? Assistant director next to him. I don't know who gave birth to 2 sons, and didn't dare to have a 3rd child, but still wanted a daughter. Soon after finishing breakfast, The staff came to distribute tasks. The task is very simple. Children go out and find ingredients in the village. After finding them, bring them back for parents to cook. This will be our lunch and dinner. During this period, parents also have their own things to do. I carried a small bamboo basket and went out under my dad's outer gaze. This feeling is a bit strange, but I don't know how to describe it. Not long after going out, I vaguely heard a voice in my ear. Following the sound, I looked over. Little mute. Why don't you speak? My dad said that you could speak originally. Why don't you speak? Little mute. Don't you get angry when I call you little mute? Lil from Uncle Aver's family is bullying my Yu's younger sister. How can I tolerate this? I trotted over and quickly protected Yu behind me. Shang Lil. What are you doing? This child deserves a beating. When Shang Lil saw me appear, he wasn't panicked. He said, I'm just curious why she doesn't speak. I feel uncomfortable if I don't speak for a day. I was so angry. Then why do you call her little mute? Isn't she a little mute if she doesn't speak? I was extremely angry and started to output a bunch of words. Didn't your parents and kindergarten teacher teach you not to casually give others nicknames? Is it great to be able to talk non-stop? If you don't understand politeness, no one will like you. Yu's younger sister is different. She is cute and obedient. I like her and I don't like you. No one will like you either. No one will be your friend. The biggest attack on children, your parents don't want you anymore. Second, no one wants to be your friend. I think the former can't be said. The latter is very suitable for attacking naughty children like Shang Lil. But this naughty child who is 1 year older than me didn't know which sentence of mine hit his sore spot. His eyes suddenly turned red. Then in front of me and Yu, he burst into tears with a wow. He is so fragile. I was at a loss and stood still on the spot. There were several photographer uncles nearby, but they had no intention of coming forward to coax the child at all. Shang Lil was crying so sadly. I was thinking about whether to go and coax him. But just at this moment, Yu broke free from my hand, walked in front of Lil, stood on tiptoe, and tried hard to stretch out her chubby little hand to wipe his tears and wanted to comfort him. But she opened her mouth but couldn't say a word. Shang Lil didn't appreciate it. He also glared at her. Don't be fake kind here. Saying that, he turned around and walked away slowly with his small bamboo basket on his back. This child still deserves scolding. Yu, who was standing still, also had a little redness in her eyes. I couldn't bear to see the little sister I liked cry. I took her hand again and said firmly, Yu, sister will take you to do the task. 6 Yu and I were holding hands and strolling on the country road. She was obedient and didn't speak. But her eyes swept over all kinds of novel things one by one. Even the butterflies flying on the wildflowers could make her show a surprised expression. She is a little shorter than me. Her hand is soft. I looked at a vegetable garden not far away. Uncle the director said that all the ingredients in this village can be taken back. So I took Yu's younger sister and walked over. What kind of vegetables do you want to eat? Younger sister? When I came to the vegetable garden, I realized that I was too hasty. In the huge vegetable garden, I only recognized tomatoes. Yu's younger sister looked at me innocently with her round eyes and pointed at the tomatoes. Younger sister, do you only recognize tomatoes too? Yu nodded honestly. I looked back at the photographer uncles. They had already firmly shaken their heads. Even the camera shook. Useless men. I was extremely disappointed. I quickly picked several big and red tomatoes. Half were put in Yu's small bamboo basket and half in my bamboo basket. For the rest, I looked at the green seedlings in the field. I tried to pull one out. Underneath was the root. It was a bit like a vegetable we had eaten at home before. Mom is a strong woman. She doesn't like cooking. At home, aunties who are hired cook. I only occasionally watch aunties cook in the kitchen. But for the appearance of vegetables before they are cooked, I mostly don't recognize them. I pulled out a small iron shovel from the small bamboo basket and started digging potatoes. Yu Yu was by my side. She used her little hand to pull out the potatoes in the soil. Her clean little hand instantly became dirty. But not only did she not mind. She even chuckled. Not only her. But the clothes I just put on this morning were also stained with soil. Forget it. Digging for vegetables is fun. We dug a lot of potatoes with great effort. Finally, I randomly pulled out a few green seedlings. Uncle the director said that today's lunch and dinner depend on us. Pull more. Finally. The voice of Uncle the director came from the earpiece of the photographer. Uncle, you guys quickly persuade the two of them. Don't just mess up this vegetable garden. Photographer Uncle. At this time, Yu Yu and I also picked up our small bamboo baskets. I saw that there was dirt on her face and wanted to wipe it off. But I forgot that my hand was also dirty. As soon as I wiped it, I was stunned. Yu Yu didn't know that she had become a little cat. She reached out, and also wanted to wipe the dirt off my face. But as soon as she did it, she was also stunned. Finally, I laughed with a theft first. She also grinned. Carrying the small bamboo basket, I took Yu Yu and went to mess up another vegetable garden. There are corns here. The small bamboo basket is almost full. Yu Yu can't hold more things either. Gigi. Yu Yu. Just at this time, another equally childish shout sounded from behind. I turned around and saw Hao and the other three. The small bamboo baskets on their backs also had a lot of things. I waved and responded, Brother Hao. Brother Hao is 8 years old. He is much taller than me and looks very reliable. Following him are Jia, who is the same age as me, and Lil, who was made to cry by me not long ago. Zhang Lil followed awkwardly behind Hao. Gigi. Yu Yu. What vegetables did you pick? I showed them my fruitful results. Brother Hao said, we all have green vegetables. But we still lack meat. Meat. My eyes lit up. I was still thinking about what was missing. It turned out to be meat. Children will become thin if they don't eat meat. But the problem of meat really stumped us. Vegetables can be picked from the ground. For meat, we may have to ask adults for help. I suddenly remembered that when I was looking for the house yesterday, I passed by a place and heard the crowing of chickens. There were many chickens raised there. Brother Hao. How about we pick eggs? I know there is a place with a lot of chickens. Eggs. Hao was excited for a moment. Yes. Let's pick eggs. So the 5 of us children rushed to the chicken coop vigorously. But when we really arrived, the children who were pampered in the city all showed disgusted expressions. Jia, it stinks. Zhang Lil also didn't hide his disgust. In such a stinky place. I don't want to go in. There is a lot of chicken manure inside. I looked at the little Yu Yu. Although she is cute, she may not be a match for the big rooster inside. So I took Yu Yu to the fence. The small opening here just allows us to reach our hands through. Yu Yu. Wait here. I'll go in and pick eggs and pass them out to you. Saying that I was about to go in. As a result, Zhang Lil over there was not willing. He pointed at Yu Yu and said loudly, why doesn't she have to go in? I looked back at him and said righteously, because I don't want to let my fairy sister smell the stink. Mind your own business. I spoil her. So what? Saying that, I stepped into the fence without hesitation. As soon as I entered, it really smelled bad. Zhang Lil was furious outside. Who doesn't have a sister? I have two. Really? I don't believe it. My light words made him so angry that he wanted to jump up. Seeing me go in, Hao thought that as the eldest brother, he couldn't show timidity in front of his younger brothers and sisters. So he took a deep breath and also opened the door and went in. Then it was Jia. He followed closely behind Hao. Finally, it was Zhang Lil whose eyes were red from holding back. There are so many eggs here. I quickly passed one in each hand to Yu Yu outside. Yu Yu just doesn't talk. But she is really obedient. Those big eyes stare at people. My heart is pounding. So cute. I picked 8 eggs. 4 for Yu Yu and 4 for me. I picked more. When I was about to go out, they also went out. Although the chicken coop was stinky, chicken was delicious. I regretfully looked at the chickens walking around and walked out. 7 Just at this time, Gia, who was walking in front, suddenly looked at the roadside in horror. He pointed and his voice trembled. There are geese. Geese? Before I could react, suddenly there was a burst of goose cries. Looking intently, 7 or 8 imposing geese were walking quickly towards us. I was far away, but Yu was the closest. At this moment, she was lowering her head and putting the eggs in the small bamboo basket. She didn't react either. Then she was pecked on the butt by the most arrogant big goose at the head. How quickly ran over and pulled Yu over. But being pecked by a goose was very painful. Yu's tears fell patter. I was angry. I suddenly rushed into the flock of geese. The photographer uncle who was originally going to come forward to drive away the geese paused. How shouted, Gigi, come back quickly. I didn't listen. At this moment, Yu, who was still shedding tears, suddenly spoke with a crying voice. Sister. For a while, people around didn't know whether they should be shocked that Yu spoke or worried that I would be the next unlucky one to be packed by a goose. I suddenly reached out and caught the most arrogant one at the head. It was the one that just packed my precious sister. I grabbed its neck and walked back angrily. There were continuous goose cries behind me. How and the others in front showed horrified expressions. I shouted at them, let's go. Probably because my momentum was too strong. I grabbed the big goose and walked back. The cries of the other geese behind gradually became distant. It might also be that they were driven away by the photographer uncle. I didn't pay attention to these. Along the way, except for caring about Yu, all my strength was used to suppress the big goose. Yu's eyes were red. She followed how and looked at the big goose beside me in fear. She was still shouting sister, in a milky voice. I waved my fist at Lil in front. Did you hear that? Yu's younger sister can talk. He stared at my hands holding the big goose in fear and didn't refute. I started shouting for Dad loudly when I was still a long way from the small brick house. Dad. When my dad came out of the house, what he saw was his beautiful daughter holding a big goose with both hands. The expressions on the faces of the several children beside her were complicated. The oldest How was carrying the small bamboo basket on his back. He was holding Yu, who was also carrying a small bamboo basket with one hand and was carrying my small bamboo basket with the other hand. This scene made his handsome face flash with a moment of astonishment. Then I said viciously to him, Dad, kill it for me. I want to eat goose. Dare to pack my fairy sister? I'll eat you. My dad didn't move for a long time. It looked like his CPU was burned. My dad killed the goose. But we have to eat it for dinner. Aunt Sue hurriedly took Yu back. The mobile phone that was confiscated by the program team before was also taken back. I heard that Aunt Sue was in a hurry to video chat with Yu's sister's psychologist. My dad made lunch complicated lie. After eating, he started to reason with me. Gigi, run when you encounter danger next time. Don't rush up. Do you know? Dad will worry about you. My dad popularized to me how dangerous geese are. I nodded. Dad, I won't do it next time. My dad was still in shock. He was very worried. Your mom will scold both of us when she watches the show later. I patted my dad's hand. Dad, don't be afraid. My mom is very reasonable. Reason with children. What reason to talk to a husband? I don't understand my dad's sadness. But looking at that big goose, I asked him, Dad, can I invite you and them to come to our house for dinner? Yes. Call them all over. Only our family has meat. So I set off alone, and went door to door to invite them to my house to eat iron pots to goose. When I came to Uncle Xavier's house, I found that there were a few more new faces in his house. The uncle of the program team said that because Uncle Xavier's wife had a temporary business trip, the twin daughters who were 2 years old at home were sent over to participate in the program together. I looked at a pair of little girls who were crying loudly because they came to a strange place. Then I looked at Uncle Zhang, who was in a flurry trying to coax his daughters. Finally. My gaze fell on Zhang Liu, who had a dark face beside him. He saw me. His expression became strange for a moment. Finally. He showed off and looked at me. See? I have two identical sisters. There really are. I snorted coldly. So there are. But your sisters don't like you. Zhang Liu stiffened again. But because he was not convinced. He snorted and retorted me. Who said my sisters don't like me? I said. Why would they like you? Zhang Liu was not convinced. He walked over to his dad and raised his hand to hug one of his sisters. Uncle Xavier was probably worried that his son would make his sister cry even more. Or he thought that his 6-year-old son with short arms and legs would drop his sister. However, unexpectedly, as soon as the little girl was in her brother's arms, the person who was crying loudly suddenly stopped and stared at her brother with teary eyes. I saw Zhang Liu speak stiffly. Zhang Yinan. Don't cry. The sister in his arms is the elder one of the twins. Her nickname is an An. Then she stopped crying. The old father over there fell into deep thought. The other daughter in his words also broke free from his embrace and threw herself at her brother. Brother. Zhang Xixi also stopped crying. I saw Uncle Xavier's face darken. They don't like you two at all. They just have to find their brother. Right? The old father was very hurt. He worked hard to coax his daughters. In the end, they liked the one who was unfriendly to him. Zhang Liu provocatively looked at me. So childish. Uncle Xavier finally had time to look at me. Gigi. What's the matter? Uncle? Do you want to come to my house for iron pots to goose tonight? I issued an invitation. Uncle Xavier looked at the people of the program team at the first time. Can we go to someone else's house as guests tonight? I don't care, Uncle Shang. My family is killing a big goose. My dad's cooking is extremely delicious. For some reason, Uncle Xavier was particularly interested in eating the food cooked by my dad. While he was still hesitating, I said to the two sisters who looked exactly the same, Sisters, my dad can make bunny pastries. They are very beautiful. Bunny. Sister and Un showed a strong interest. Sister Zhang Xixi directly asked her dad for it. Dad. Bunny. Uncle Xavier. He smiled at me. Gigi. We will go over later. I completed my task and went to the next house. When I got to Yu's younger sister's place, Aunt Sue's eyes were still red. Aunt Sue. I issued an invitation. Do you want to bring Yu to my house for iron pots to goose tonight? Aunt Sue squatted down and hugged me. Gigi. Auntie thanks you. Thanks to you. Yu started to speak. Aunt Sue smelled fragrant. It was different from the fragrance on Yu's younger sister. The younger sister wants to eat the big goose. It just pecked you. Let's eat it. Aunt Sue also agreed and said that she would come to my small brick house as a guest tonight. After inviting everyone, I went back with light steps. Uncle the director was originally not allowed everyone to come to my house as guests. But after my dad reasoned with him, he gave in. In the afternoon, uncles and aunts brought the vegetables that their children brought home. Some washed the vegetables and some lit the fire. It was very lively inside. Outside, us children stayed together. Yu's younger sister nestled beside me. Zhang Liu, who was as arrogant as a big goose before, led his twin sisters and provocatively looked at me with his eyes on one side. Brother Hao was very active in guessing which one was an N and which one was Xixi. He made the two sisters giggle. As for Jia from Uncle Zhao's family, he was staring in the direction of the kitchen. He should be hungry. Because there were several children. My dad brought out a plate of small pastries in the shape of rabbits, tigers or cat paws in the middle. When Aunt Qing came, she brought an oven from the big villa where she lived. My dad showed his ingenuity and made a plate of small animal pastries, which were welcomed by all the children. Jia even asked my dad if he could stay tonight. Uncle Zhao's face darkened. In the evening, dinner was finally ready. The big goose that pecked Yu's younger sister became a pot of fragrant meat. I ate until my mouth was full of oil. My dad still remembered to wipe my mouth from time to time. Everyone gathered in our worst house, and had a great time eating. The topics they talked about were very complicated. We children couldn't understand. That night, I just remembered that the big goose was very delicious. Finally, after eating, I was sleepy. I leaned against my dad and fell asleep in a daze. Later, after watching the show, I learned that after I fell asleep, Dad held me in his arms and continued to chat with uncles and aunts. The voice was much lower. Finally, uncles and aunts left with their sleeping children in their arms. Those who were not asleep were led back by their parents. The twins of Uncle Zhang's family were awake. Zhang Liu was asleep. He carefully held his son and went back. The two sisters held their dad's clothes on one side and walked slowly. 9 On the third day of shooting, as soon as I woke up, I was told that there would be a parent-child tacit understanding competition today. Looking at Uncle the director who was smiling maliciously, I felt that today might be targeting our father and daughter. How long have my dad and I known each other? But when we arrived at the gathering point, we found that Uncle Xavier, who had to take care of 3 people, seemed to be even worse off. When everyone arrived, Uncle the director also took out his small loudspeaker. Good morning, everyone, parents and children. Today our arrangement is to enhance the understanding between parents and children. The first session is parent-child three-legged race. Parent-child three-legged race. This event is often held in our kindergarten. My mom loves to participate. Not only is she actively participating, but she also wants to win first place. According to my mom, this kind of project is too childish for children, but it is just right for adults. My dad said to me enthusiastically, Gigi, shall Dad and you win first place? Dad. I looked up and said seriously to him, every parent who comes to our kindergarten to play the three-legged race says this to their baby. But there is only one champion in the end. My dad was slightly stunned. I continued, we have to be down to earth. Dad. The photographer uncle who was taking pictures of us on the side was about to laugh crazy. It was hard for him not to shake his hands even like this. My dad, who was not so down to earth, became even more motivated after hearing what I said. I don't understand my dad anymore. When the first round of competition really started, my leg was tied with my dad's. The other parents and children also tied their legs. The twins of Uncle Xavier's family were sitting next to the finish line, each holding a small bench and drinking milk. They were dressed very cute, like lovely New Year dolls. At the order of Uncle the director, my dad and I started running with our tied legs at the same time. I have played this game a lot. As we were taking steps, on the side, Uncle Brian and Gia fell down unfortunately at the beginning. My dad and I cooperated unexpectedly well. But on the other side, Aunt Ching and Brother How were obviously faster. There were some other sounds vaguely coming from behind, but I didn't have the heart to listen. In the end, we still lost to Aunt Ching and them. After stopping and looking back, Uncle Xavier and Uncle Brian had their legs tangled many times in the middle. Although Aunt Sue was slow, she obviously had the attitude of just participating. You had a great time playing. A twin sister sitting on the side watching the excitement also giggled, especially when they saw their dad and brother fall. They laughed even more happily. Champion Aunt Ching and Brother How received a lot of admiring gazes. As the second place, we are also proud. The second session is parent-child question and answer. That is, the director asks a question about a child or a parent. Parents and children write down the answers at the same time. Then see if the answers of the two are the same. If they are the same, they get points. If they are different, they don't get points. I looked at my dad. Dad also looked down at me. Both of us felt the pressure. The first question, what's the name of the child's best friend now? The first question stumped my dad. He looked at me. I also looked at him. Innocent on both faces. After a minute, we both showed our answer boards. Only Aunt Sue and Uncle Xavier got the answers right. When seeing that his dad got the answer right, Zhang Liu himself was obviously stunned for a moment and then became awkward again. Uncle Xavier showed a cool and arrogant smile. In this round, it was his turn to be the bee king. My dad and I looked at each other. Only looking remained, commonly known as staring at each other with wide eyes. Uncle the director glanced over my answer board and my dad's blank answer board. Gigi. Who is Wonk Ike? I said, it's the dog raised by my uncle. A white Samoyed. The second question, what flower does the dad or mom present like the most? I thought hard about this question for a moment. Finally, I frowned and guessed an answer. After showing the answer board, I wrote peony on it. My dad also wrote peony. Uncle the director asked me how I knew that dad liked peonies the most. I answered honestly, I don't know. This is mom's favorite flower. There is always a bouquet sent home on mom's birthday every year. I thought this was a good start. As a result, this was the only question that my dad and I got right in this round of the question and answer game. Even Uncle Brian and Gia got 3 questions right. My dad was in a completely dejected state. Uncle the director was quite afraid that he would be unable to think straight after the shooting ended. He even accompanied him to chat specially. But my dad didn't appreciate it. He called his wife and complained. Uncle the director only ate a mouthful of dog food. After my dad finished the call, he had a talk with me about father and daughter. In the end, I was sleepy. I only remembered that my dad said he loved me and mom very much. 10 on the 4th day. The program team organized a picnic to increase our children's sense of participation. My dad gave each child a small piece of dough. It's a bit fun. The food for the picnic was also made by the parents. The roasted chicken legs made by my dad captured the hearts of the children. The pizza made by Aunt Sue is also good. The purple rice and taro puree milk brick made by Aunt Ching is extremely delicious. The fruits picked by Uncles Avier and Uncle Brian are also delicious. Zhang Liu was still leading his sisters and showing off in front of me. What's there to show off? Who doesn't have a sister? I held Yu's little hand and provoked back in the same way. I really like Yu's younger sister and have already started thinking about whether I can invite my sister to my house as a guest when I go home tomorrow. I also like the twin sisters of Uncle Zhang's family, so I also invited them. Brother Hao Hao is also very good. But he is 8 years old and a sensible big child. He said he wanted to go home, so he refused my invitation. As soon as Gia heard that the aunt at my house could make a lot of delicious food, he agreed. Even Zhang Liu reluctantly said he accepted my invitation for his sisters. Although I don't like him very much. My house is very big. And before, I saw him secretly find Yu and apologize. Children's hatred comes and goes quickly. Moreover, I am a child who is not fussy about small details. In the evening, Dad and the others were called away by Uncle the director and didn't come back for a long time. I don't know what he did. I fell asleep while waiting. I secretly picked a small flower during the day and put it on the bedside table. I don't know if he saw it when he came back. On the last day when it was time to go home, my dad's assistant drove in any van. I was carrying a small backpack and dragging my own suitcase. My little friends gathered in front of the car. The assistant uncle was stunned. Gigi, what are you doing? Assistant uncle, I want to take them home as guests. Then several parents who came to find their children gathered in front of my dad's nanny van. My dad was standing behind them. Teachers see. Sorry to trouble you. I'll take this naughty boy back right now, Uncle Xavier said as he pulled Zhang Liu's ear. Why did you bring your sisters? Can't we afford to raise you at home? After everyone left, my dad came over and touched my head. You can also invite them to our house as guests in the future. Okay. I sighed regretfully. After returning home, my mom also came back and gave my dad and me a hug each. After more than half a month passed, the variety show that my dad and I filmed was broadcast. My dad's popularity is still amazing. A large number of his fans poured in. It was also at this time that I learned where Dad and the others went on the night before we came back. Uncle the director asked them to go to a room where there was only themselves and the camera. The director asked them to share their feelings as parents inside. Occasionally, the director would also ask questions. Uncle Jean said. My second child came very suddenly. We didn't even have time to discuss it with Lil. Then God sent us two children. After the children were born, my wife and I had to focus on the family. We pushed aside a lot of work. We didn't take good care of Lil's psychology either. Newborn children are very noisy. Two children are even noisier. We are all at a loss. So many times we didn't have an effective communication with him. This is our fault as parents. When my dad faced the camera, he said, before coming on this show, I was separated from my daughter for about 4 years. When she was just born and couldn't speak, I stayed abroad for various reasons. In these few days, Gigi and I, from unfamiliar father and daughter, have become a bit familiar father and daughter. As he spoke, he seemed to laugh. The director asked about my mom. This was probably a link that Dad had communicated with Uncle the director. Dad showed a slightly smug smile. I had a crush on my wife for many years. After finally chasing her. She is so beautiful. She has a good family background and is very capable. She even said that she would let me live off her. I really like her very much. The barrage said that my dad's expression was like that of a love-brained person. It was suggested that he go and dig wild vegetables. My mom watched the show and started to interrogate my dad about what the secret love he mentioned in it was all about. Only then did I know that they were from the same university. But my mom is 2 grades above my dad. He had a secret crush on someone for several years. But my mom said that when she first met my dad pretended it was the first time he saw her. So scheming. But what I didn't expect was that because of my actions of catching big geese on the variety show, and being Yu's flower protector, I also became popular. My dad's fans changed from, which woman has ruined our brother, at the beginning to, this child is a bit cute, Hugh's cooking show, and then to, how to kidnap Hugh's daughter and take her home. Gigi. My baby daughter. This little face is so chubby. Mom kisses. MUA damn it. How can I skip the man and get such a daughter? You are my only brother. Give me this child. You and your sister-in-law have another one. She is only 5 years old. She is furious for the beauty. She stews big geese for love. She really. I burst into tears. Later, when I wanted to take children home, they called me a child trafficker. Damn it. It doesn't sound good at all. Later, my dad occasionally took me to his workplace. Those uncles and aunts always like to pinch my face. Pinching is okay. But they also want to kiss. I equally hate all adults without boundaries. My dad continued to show off his love and daughter as always. His fans gradually recognized his love-brain nature, and have resigned themselves to it. They often educate me in my dad's comment section, and say that I can't learn from my dad and be love-brained. I deeply agree. Later, my mom's identity was accidentally exposed. The major social media platform was paralyzed again. It wasn't because the identity of my dad's marriage partner was exposed, but because of my mom's identity. His fans, isn't it? Brother? What you said before about marrying into a wealthy family is true. Sister-in-law's identity is so awesome. Gradually, I feel that the main character is not worthy. My dad? My little uncle still has objections to my dad as always. He thinks that in the years when my dad couldn't come back due to various reasons after going abroad, my mom was too hardworking. But my little uncle is so outstanding. His scientific research has achieved results. After my mom's identity was exposed, someone followed the clues and found out my little uncle's current identity and his photos from college. So my dad suddenly became many people's brother-in-law. Brother-in-law. For the sake of being your fan for 7 or 8 years, give me your little brother X. I am your unmarried sister-in-law. Brother-in-law. I really like your little brother. Excuse me. Sister has a husband. Do you mind having one more wife? My little uncle fled into his research institute overnight. My dad began to wonder if he still had any normal fans. By the way, he bluntly told those fans who wanted to be my mom's wife that they were daydreaming. He even posted a post. This soft meal can only be eaten by me. The picture is a photo of my mom and him holding hands with 10 fingers interlocked. Both of them are wearing wedding rings.